Hey, this is the Oxendine Law Podcast. I'm your host, Jarrod Oxendine, along with my co-host, Christine Palmer. And with over 36 years of combined experience, we are here to give you the knowledge and expertise that you need to navigate through your divorce case. From a complex divorce case all the way to a nasty custody battle, we're going to tell you what you need to know. Hey there, welcome back to the Oxendine Law Podcast. I think today's episode is going to be an important one. It's going to resonate with a lot of people. A lot of people always ask us, what are the top reasons that people get divorced? And I think sometimes we get asked that question because people are experiencing some of these things and they're trying to decide if they fix in that box.
Right.
Like, you ever pick up that?
People divorcing over this issue, or is it just me?
Yeah, the funny thing is, so I've got a question for my friend.
Yeah.
And I'm always wondering, I know who the friend is.
Yeah.
The friend's probably, I never tell them I know it's that they're the friend, right? But people want to know, am I going through something similar to what other people are going through?
Sure.
So what would the top reasons for divorce be? I know the answer. We're going to share it with you. But before we do that, Christine has an interesting take on divorce and reasons for divorce.
Yeah, I'm asked this often. I was actually asked this in an interview for a magazine a couple of years ago. My answer's never changed. So people ask me, what do you think is the number one reason for divorce? And it's easy. It's people that should have never been married to begin with. That is the absolute number one reason. And my controversial opinion of that is I truly believe that the wedding industry puts so much pressure on, especially females. I've been there, to get that ring and you want the big wedding dress. And hey, fun fact, I was on Say Yes to the Dress. I did a reality show for my wedding. Yeah. So I have been there. I've been to Bridals by Lori and tried on every gown and got filmed, and I had a giant wedding out in Hawaii. I will say that my former husband and I, we eloped. So that was our choice, the wedding part in Hawaii. We didn't have people there. But the pressure of wanting to fit in, wanting to have the ring, wanting to have the dress, wanting these elaborate giant weddings just to have a really good Instagram reel. And these people could buy a house and a car for what the parents are shelling into table placements and floral arrangements and what silverware we use. It's insane. And number one, it puts pressure on people to get married when they should not be in that position just yet. Number two, you start off your whole relationship probably in a little bit of an anxiety, and because you're arguing over, right? Like, what are we going to do? Who are we inviting? Who's sitting with whom? His family, her family. So the couple experiences the stress that is wholly unnecessary. And then number three, start off in financial distress. Yeah, the families help out a lot, but that couple is shelling out money too. Like, all these reasons, just for what? And then the marriage part, the important part, it's like, okay, well, what do we do now? Like, we've spent this year planning this wedding. So in my opinion, the number one reason for divorce is that those people should not have been married. I've asked people before, if you didn't have that big wedding, like, would you have married that guy? If he just said, I just want to go to the courthouse. I don't believe in all that. I want to go to the courthouse. Hell no, I wouldn't have married him, right? Because you wanted the wedding, you didn't want the husband.
Well, it's an interesting perspective. I think it's accurate. The wedding industry, dresses, rings are still very traditional. Whereas, interestingly, the whole society in general is not as traditional as it used to be when it comes to divorce, right? So you still have these traditional societal pressures to get the ring, to have the big wedding, to get married because it's the right thing to do, right? But then when it's time to get divorced, you don't even have to have a reason anymore.
Right.
Like back in the day, a judge would not grant your divorce if you could not prove a conduct ground. There had to be adultery, abandonment, some type of cruelty, physical cruelty, emotional cruelty. And if you couldn't prove those things, the judge would make you stay married. Now, you can get a divorce just because you want a divorce. I mean, the most honest answer I ever had from a client, because I don't know how you do it, Christine, but one of my first questions whenever I'm having a consultation with somebody is, what problems you having? What's the reason for divorce? And this guy just took a deep breath and kind of looked at me and said, honestly, I just don't like her anymore. I was like, well, it's good enough.
Check.
Georgia's in no fault today, and most states are in no fault. That's it. Irretrievably broken. You're right. It's in the Georgia code is grounds number 13. I think most, if not all, the states in the country are now no fault. which means if you want a divorce, you can get divorced. If you want out, you can get out. But I agree with you. A lot of these weddings and pressures to have the big wedding and the dress and the ring are overdone. I mean, I remember my personal wedding. My wife was one of those. She wanted the big elaborate wedding. She wanted the big, all the people there. We had I think 400, 500 people at our wedding.
I don't know 400 people.
I mean, it was insane. And you know what I remember about my wedding?
What?
Very little to nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's for everybody else.
And it was over.
It's not for you.
Right.
It's for everybody else.
That's exactly
right. You spend your whole time with 500 people walking around, smiling, shaking hands. You don't even know everybody that's there, and you don't get to enjoy any of it.
Not
versus
not at all.
Maybe having a small, intimate setting, closest friends and family members. Much more memorable, much more enjoyable.
Yeah, no, our wedding was perfect. It was great. But like you said, it's a lot of the traditional roles, but it's now on crack, right? Like a ring isn't good enough. It's got to be a 5-carat ring. It's got to be platinum. Like a dress isn't good enough. It's got to be this designer. Like, who are you wearing? This isn't the Emmys. Like, it's my wedding. I'm wearing TJ Maxx,
Right. And these elaborate planned engagements, they're all staged out.
Yes, they're spending as much money on an engagement stunt that you used to spend on a wedding. So yeah, the industry is everything is evolved.
And then what happens?
Big.
Then you see all that put on social media, right? Everybody, the pictures with the rock, the hand, and check out my ring, check out my
nails just because I got to get a picture of my ring. And then it goes again. And then it perpetuates the cycle because now her sorority sister sees it and I can't believe she got married before me. Now I got to find a guy.
Yes. Or she has a guy and she starts putting pressure on a guy that
they've been
she might not really.
Years.
Yeah,
we've been together for 3,
and you haven't asked me yet. And so she's putting pressure on this guy when she might not even really want to marry him either.
That is the number one reason. The ultimatum, and again, the wedding industry.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. So that's true. I think. What are some more reasons? I'll throw one out. There's really 3 top reasons. I think. First one, in my opinion, would be lack of communication.
Yeah.
And what I mean by lack of communication, people just grow apart. Life gets busy. You have kids. You can't drown out the noise. You're constantly running after your kids. You've got practices. You've got games. You've got school events. You've got work obligations.
And then you're tired.
By the end of the day, you both just sit down on the couch and you fall asleep, or you get in bed and you crash.
Yeah.
So over time, unfortunately, you will start to slowly grow apart. You'll stop talking. Your kids end up leaving and graduating, and you're sitting there in a room with a stranger. Yep. You're looking at that person across from you on the couch, and you're like, I don't even know anything about this person anymore.
Yeah.
And so the tip there, I think, again, that's one of the number one reasons for divorce, lack of communication. You grow apart over time, and all of a sudden you have nothing in common. How do you fix that? Make time for your spouse.
Those check-ins.
Plan trip. You got to get out. You got to check out. You got to drown out the noise. And you got to have at least once per year. I would say that's not even enough. Maybe a monthly date night.
Sure.
Certainly at least one trip per year where it's just you and your spouse, where you can reconnect, find the things you loved about him and the things that he loved about her. It really lights the fire.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And not only that, but it helps you to be a better spouse too, right? Like you forget to cater to your spouse because you don't feel catered to. And it's not like it's necessarily, he's not doing anything, so I'm not either. You're not there yet. You'll get there. You'll get to the resentment phase. But right now it's oh, good. He doesn't want to have sex tonight. I don't either. It's really like you allow each other to slack in a way that it's almost comforting. Oh, thank God. Oh, he doesn't want to go out tonight to dinner either. Oh, good. I'd much rather order a pizza. And so there's not that date night. There's not the intimacy. And you're each allowing the other to do it. And nobody's stepping up saying, no, this is not what we're supposed to do. They're sitting there saying, oh, thank God she's the same way. So that communication has got to be in there.
You got to date your spouse.
You do.
Got to date your spouse. Number 2, I would say, is being controlled, being in a controlling relationship, which is probably also financially controlling.
Sure.
So, Christine, I know you've seen it hundreds of times like I have. You have the client that comes in the office. They're not allowed to have a separate bank account.
Right.
Their spouse has to be on the bank account. And not only is the spouse on the bank account, they're on a stipend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. His direct deposit doesn't go into that joint account. That goes into his account and he gives you an allowance.
You get an allowance. And not only do you get the allowance, you're then micromanaged on the allowance.
Sure.
And they're looking at your bank account. What did you buy at Target the other day?
Right.
Did we really need that? You have no financial independence. Everything you do is wrong. Everything he or she does is right. So you're dealing with a complete narcissist.
Yeah. Yeah.
That gets old after a while.
For sure. Yeah. And that's a slippery slope too, because generally the controller, the person who wants to exert that control, starts off by telling you, don't worry about it. I got it. And again, it's the lack of communication. So we're going to go back to that. But instead of saying, no, I want to be an equal. It's like, okay, cool. I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to balance a checkbook. I don't have to, worry about, is the credit card paid or we're going to have to pay interest? Like, I get to take a back seat. It's like a privilege until it's not. Mm-hmm. And you wake up 10 years later and you have no idea what your assets are. You're literally asking for gas money and he's checking the mileage on your car and saying, well, the school is 14 miles there and back. You shouldn't be out of gas until next Tuesday. Where are you going?
That's it. And it's not just financially controlled. I hate to say it. You're just controlled. You've got to be micromanaged about when you can get together with your friends.
Yeah.
Even
Family.
Family members.
Is your mom coming to town?
What temperature you put the thermostat on.
Sure.
I've seen that legitimately.
Yeah.
Where it's 1 degree difference. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And somebody goes off
Change
to handle.
password to the app. You can't get in anymore. Revoke your access to the Nest because you went it to 74 instead of 72.
No, you can't do anything right. It's something as simple, and people are going to laugh about this, but other people are going to feel the pain.
Yeah.
Like you open the box of cereal wrong.
Yeah.
Like the bag.
Why is it torn? Yeah.
Yeah. Why did you tear it instead of separate it completely from the middle?
Yeah.
These are real stories.
They are. Yeah. It happens.
Somebody that's in a controlling situation, whether they're just controlled physically, emotionally, financially, number 2 reason for divorce.
Right. And it's also the inverse of that, because sometimes you just get to that slacking point to where the resentment phase I was talking about comes in, and then you're the one and you're like, why did he leave the peanut butter lid halfway screwed on? And it's just the straw that broke the camel's back because the spoon's in the peanut butter. And
it's crazy.
I can't take this anymore. I can't live like this. And they're like, can't live like what? With the half peanut butter lid on,
Yeah. And these spouses that control their spouse about what they do and where they go and how they spend their time, it's not even because they necessarily want to spend time with their spouse.
No.
It's just because they want to control.
Golf. You just need to be home doing the laundry.
Yeah, they want to control you.
Yeah.
It's tough situation to live. I understand when people file for divorce.
I encourage
for that reason.
it. Yes.
That's the way to live. Number 3, everybody loves to talk about the sexy topic.
Yes, the salacious.
What am I going to say, Christine? What could possibly be the next reason for divorce?
Right. Clearly it is adultery. And it's so funny, like you were talking about before, how traditional things have changed. It used to be you had to prove a grounds, and now we don't. We've talked about that in a previous episode. But, now it's like everyone hears the word divorce and it's like, did he cheat? What? Did he cheat? No. Wait, we're getting a divorce. Oh my God. Did she have an affair? And so it's still to this day, even though I think it's probably not ranked in the very, very top of our realistic clients coming in saying it's because of adultery, it's still the most commonly thought of.
I personally believe that I hear more of it. I mean, it seems like every week in the office, I have at least one client, and the reason for the divorce is either because somebody cheated or because they suspect that their spouse has cheated.
That's the one too. So this all goes back to the lack of communication. And he used to never do this. He used to never do that. And because your mind wants to fill in those blanks, he's just trying to get away from home. He's probably off gambling in a gas station somewhere, and you think he's with a hooker in a hotel. But it's sort of if he's not spending money on me, he's got to be spending on a girl. Or maybe he's just stowing it away. But yeah, I think suspicion of adultery is a big thing. We have clear adultery cases. We have people that confess to it. We have people that try their best to hide it, but aren't able. So they're out there. I'm not saying that adultery isn't in the top. It certainly is, but I don't think it's quite as common as people want to think when it's the number 1 reason for divorce. A lot better reasons. And really, it's the people that have stayed in too long, usually. They didn't do that communication phase, number 1. They've possibly been controlled or not been controlled, number 2. That led them to adultery. So you probably stuck it out a little too long if we've gotten to the adultery phase. Because happy people don't cheat.
Well, I don't think it's number 1, but I certainly think it's top 5.
For sure.
And
top 3.
And top 3 for sure. And, one of the other questions I get about adultery is people always want to know, is it mostly the guy?
Right.
Or is it mostly the woman? And I'm here to tell you, it's equal. Women cheat just as much as men cheat, and men cheat just as much as women cheat.
And women are better at hiding it.
There you go. And women are better at hiding it. Guys make mistakes.
That's it.
And they get caught. Little did they know. The woman's so shocked. I can't believe you cheated on me.
Right.
She had her affair probably a couple years earlier. But we didn't catch her.
Super sleuths, like we will dive to the depths of the internet to find out, where this alleged girl went to middle school and find her, friend from back home. Yes, all women are super sleuths. So women are better at hiding it, and they're also better at catching the dudes.
Well, and then the next natural question is, how does that affect the divorce? And I think that has actually evolved over time. I remember when I first started practicing, if you could prove that the reason for the divorce is because your spouse cheated on you, you were almost guaranteed that they were going to be punished. And when I say punished, the judge is probably going to give that person a larger share of the assets than the person who committed adultery.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing that as much now anymore. And the reason is because society is desensitized to sex.
Right.
And I know this is supposed to be about divorce, but let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Sex is everywhere. Sex sells. Sex is in commercials. Sex is in all our PG movies. When we were growing up, a PG movie would never have anything in there. It was a shock to see somebody smoking a cigarette. Oh,
right.
They're smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Now, how many PG movies have sex scenes in it?
Sex scenes.
It's
everywhere.
Sex scenes. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Society is desensitized to sex and adultery, which means it's occurring more in society.
Sure.
People are more likely to cheat because society is more accepting of it. And judges see so much of it now to the point where, since they see it so much, it's not shocking their conscience like it used to.
Right. And back to my comment about the social media too, right? We all can spy on each other so much more today than we used to be able to. If you just go to the other side of town, you're safe. Now, you never know. Someone's going to see you. We're all so much more connected. There's going to be you may be in the background of somebody's photo. They're taking selfies over at the Mexican restaurant. And who is that? Scroll in. So it's so much easier to stalk people nowadays that, I think maybe adultery was as common back then, and it's just easier to get caught now.
But I do think society is more desensitized to it.
And I think,
and we could spend an hour talking about that. The whole society in general.
Celebrities, athletes, presidents, politicians. It's not even a big deal anymore. It's another one. Okay.
And so what I'm seeing in cases is you will still see judges sometimes penalize the adulterer. But now I'm seeing in most of my cases, it has to be an extreme case.
It does.
It has to be something that is just egregious.
Got to be money involved.
There's got to be money involved. It has to be a serial adulterer.
Yes.
The example I always like to give, and this is a long time ago, and this client's not going to know who I'm talking about, so I'm just going to tell a general story. But I represented a guy. This is when my client got hammered. Can you believe that? I have a client that got hammered.
It was before me, clearly.
He was over 20 years ago.
Before me.
But this guy cheated on his wife, and his wife was disabled. Right? She literally depended on caregivers.
Bad facts.
To come into the house and take care of her on a daily basis. So what did the idiot do? Ran off with this young girl, about 20-something years younger than him, and left his wife literally high and dry. He stopped paying the household bills.
Oh, no.
He stopped paying for her caregiver.
No.
So of course he got hammered.
Yeah.
Right? But those are the types of situations that I'm seeing that also involve money, high asset cases, to where a judge will actually say, okay, I'm going to give the non-offending spouse a larger share of the assets.
Sure.
But I'm not seeing 90-10.
No.
I'm not seeing 80-20. I'm not even really seeing 70-30. I mean, we're talking 55-45, 60-40.
Right.
Are you seeing the same?
Right. No, that's exactly right. That or, all right, maybe a 55-45 and, throw in a little something else. A little all right, well, and we won't count the cars. Just give her, as well, it should be an offset here. Everybody's going to keep their own vehicle. We're not going to take those into account. So there'll be a few concessions. But that has to be one with bad facts. They have to have spent money on a girlfriend, boyfriend, taking trips, or introducing the kids. Always a violation.
Never introduce the kids to your boyfriend or girlfriend until after the divorce is finalized. And then sometimes not even until maybe 6 months. We see these clauses, right? We see these clauses now that say you've got to be in a continuous relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend for at least 6 months, 9 months, or a year before you introduce the children to the boyfriend or girlfriend, right? So be smart. Keep the kids out of it. Hey, that's a wrap. We've given you our top major reasons for divorce. And hey, we've also given you some tips on how maybe you can prevent falling in some of those traps and not get divorced in the first place. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Oxendine Law Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure that you subscribe. You can join us. You can submit questions. We will answer them. We are available on all major podcast platforms. So be sure to check us out, subscribe, join, and remember, at Oxendine Law, we play to win.